Okay, here's my list of 5 pet peeves. Difficulty I had with this was paring it down to just 5. But I took a shot at it, so here we go. Anyway, pet peeve number 1. People who spout this mantra about blood family being the most important thing in the world. And I see this idea promoted time and again in the media, both in fiction and in factual programming. And it seems to be lodged in the cultural psyche like some kind of mental burr. And I think that it's bullshit. Now, I consider my family to be the people whom I love and who love me because of who we are, not because we happen to share some common near ancestor. And that's not to say that I don't love, my blood family dearly, the members of my family who I do love dearly. Of course there are, but there are people in my life who I consider to be as much part of my family, even though we aren't related that closely by blood. And I reject the idea that blood family is the most important family in your life, because I think that it devalues people by defining them in terms of which genes they happen to carry through an accident of birth, as opposed to, who they are and how they fit into your life. Someone's importance in my life is not dependent on how closely related to them I am genetically. And likewise, a close genetic relationship, I don't think, gives people the right to behave badly towards me and expect automatic forgiveness because, they're family. Or even to offer unsolicited advice or suggestions and expect me to take it on board without comment. Because normally it's going to be me wanting to tell them to just fuck off and mind their own business, even if I don't actually come out and say those words. I think the idea of blood family creates a false perspective of people's values in our lives. A person's character is more important to me than whether or not they can donate a kidney. So, pet peeve number 2. Parents of badly behaved children. Now, it's not the children themselves. I think they're completely blameless in this because it's their parents' job to teach them right from wrong and how to behave in society. And I'm convinced that most of the problems that we see today with children are down to bad parenting skills and, in particular, laziness. Of the children that I know, almost all of the ones who are badly behaved have parents who take the easy route and give them everything that they want, because setting any kind of boundaries or saying no and meaning it and then dealing with the consequences of saying no is hard work. But bringing up children is hard work, and it's a bloody important job as well, because children aren't just their parents' future, they're humanity's future. And if you're not prepared to put in the effort that this investment requires, don't have kids. And, for fuck's sake, don't tell me that little Johnny or little Janie is hyperactive or dyslexic or has attention deficit disorder or something like that. Because, I know that these conditions are real and they exist, but I'm not convinced that the prevalence we see is down to better diagnosis. I think it's just an excuse for being a crap parent. And excuses for being a crap parent wind me up even more than people who are crap parents in the first place. Because all it is laziness. It's easier to let your kids run wild if it's not their fault, I'll be coming on to that in a minute. If it's not your fault either, because if they're ill in some way, then, it's out of your hands. And of course, having kids with some kind of diagnosed medical condition provides an excellent excuse to medicate them. And again, that is so much easier than actually having to deal with it or say no. Pet peeve number 3. People who think that the world owes them a living. People who think the world owes them anything. This entitlement mindset drives me absolutely up the wall. Basically, again, I think that it's lazy people who expect everything to be handed over to them on a plate and then do nothing but bitch about it when they don't get it. Well, life is tough, life is unfair, but the struggle is what gives life much of its value, and how we deal with that struggle determines much of ours. Pet peeve number 4. People who won't take responsibility for their actions. You know, I'm fat, but it's the fast food company's fault for selling me supersized hamburgers. Or I have cancer, but it's the cigarette company's fault for selling me cigarettes. Or I'm an alcoholic, but it's the booze company's fault for making alcohol. Or I'm a criminal, but it's society's fault for not giving me a chance to make an honest living. Or, you know, I burned myself when I spilled my hot coffee, but it's the coffee house's fault for serving coffee to someone who's too fucking stupid to live. Wake up, you know, it's not always somebody else's fault. Everybody needs to take responsibility for their own actions and their own life, and not wandering around pretending to be such a fucking victim all the time. Finally, pet peeve number 5. People who think that their right to happiness takes priority over the rights of anyone and everyone else. So people who think that their freedom of speech is the freedom to say whatever they like, but that the freedom of speech only extends to other people saying what they want to hear. Or smokers who talk about their right to smoke wherever they want, but don't consider someone else's right not to breathe in their second-hand smoke. Or people who think that they have the right to worship whatever God they choose, in the manner that they choose, whether it's, you know, constant prayer or ritual mutilation of their children or oppression of women or, you know, torturing themselves over their sexuality, but that they don't feel that anyone else has the right to practice their religion, because if their religion isn't given precedence, it offends them or it upsets their God. Well, you know, the newsflash is that we're not all the same, and we get one shot at life, and no one person's happiness is more important than anybody else's, and no person's happiness should be at the expense of anybody else's. Sometimes life involves compromise, and sometimes we can't have everything that makes us happy. Sometimes we have to take into account the fact that other people's feelings and wants and desires are important too. And if we can get some of our happiness from that, then we have way more opportunity to be happy than if we just think of ourselves. I feel better for getting that off my chest.